How hard is too hard? There is a lot of data now available to check out about the race in Cataclysm, how people are doing. And there is something that may shock you, because even if you tend to agree with the fact that I think a lot of people are not doing Cataclysm, the actual data is a bit terrifying. You are not gonna believe this one. It turns out that Warcraft Logs compiles all the raiding data of everybody, and even though some of the raids are not gonna make it here, most of the raids, I would say at least 80% of the raids in the world get cataloged, they get registered here. So this is really good data to tell a bunch of stuff, mainly how people are killing the bosses, how many people are killing the bosses, we're gonna talk about that because we got really good numbers on that, and most importantly, how many people are even trying anymore. A little bit of my experience for Cataclysm Classic. I am in this season of Discovery guild called Swamp, and the people of Swamp decided to make a new guild for Cataclysm, so I figured, well, I might as well go join those guys, you know, they are the same people I raid with, you know, it's gonna be fun. The guild master of this guild, Sardako, he made a whole video documenting his struggle of running a guild in Cataclysm. He was definitely not embellishing the experience of Cataclysm for you guys, but basically, they all intended this to be a sort of casual raid, a casual guild, where we would just hang around and, okay, we're gonna figure it out, okay, we're gonna kill the bosses in 2 or 3 weeks, it's not big deal. And what happened is that in the first lockout, it became very evident that with the system that we had on Swamp, we were not going to kill the heroic bosses. Long story short, we wiped on heroic bosses for 4 hours, and Sardako made the decision, and I think he was right, okay? I cannot blame him here, but he made the decision to say, guys, this is not gonna be a casual guild anymore, we're gonna have to be like tryhards, because we're not gonna kill the bosses if we are like what we're doing at Swamp here, it's not gonna work. It's really interesting because Cataclysm bosses are supposed to be pre-nerf in private servers, but I assure you Cataclysm Classic is way harder than private servers. I never struggled this much in Apollo, for example. And even though I agree that it was the only way he was gonna ever kill the bosses, I just told him, listen man, like if you need me I'm gonna go there, but find a replacement, I'm not doing this anymore. And that's basically the story of Medina and Heroic. Medina is not progressing through Heroic anymore. Medina is content making his normals, which is funny because back in 2019, okay, back when I was like, what was I, 20? Yeah, back when I was 20 years old, I would have loved doing that. I would have been the first in line to go there and wipe on a boss 4 hours. I would have thought that was amazing. And nowadays, when I got more time than ever and I play this game for literal money, the last thing I want to do is sit on Magmo and wipe for 4 hours. I don't know. It's just, I guess it's age, it's time, I don't even know. Granted, not all the guilds in the world have been having the same hard time we were having. There's some people from the private server days right here, for example, Get Carried. These people were actually a TBC private server guild. I know the guild leader of this place. It is Rejubi. Is he here? Apparently he's not here. Maybe he doesn't play Cataclysm. He does play Sword. But I mean, they are really, really good. Obviously, they are like one of the best guilds in the world right now. But they aren't like professionals, okay? They aren't playing this thing 40 hours a week or something like that. At least not back then. Maybe they do now. But regardless, okay, yeah. For the most part, I think most guilds are having my experience in Cataclysm, that we all thought it was gonna be easy, and then we got smacked in the butt. I think we are the average, not the exception to this, and the data seems to support that, so let's talk about the data for a minute here. These are all the heroic kills of 25-man heroic, and I also got here the 10-man heroic, because you gotta add those up too. There are some 10-man people and some 25-man people. The system that my guild was having at the time, I think they still do this, is that they had a normal 25-man, and they progressed in heroic with 10-men. I mean, some people maybe do that, so the numbers could be a little bit inflated here even, so that's being too generous. But look at the data here. Only 375 guilds kill Alakir, only 316 guilds kill Nefarian, and only 357 guilds killed Sinestra. So if you take 357 and you multiply it by 25, you got 8,925 people killed Sinestra in 25 heroic, and then you gotta go here and take a look at the 10-man heroic, and it is 461. It's a little more actually, 4,610 of course, so about 13,000 people in total since the raid came out, okay, we're talking like a month now, over a month, it is 13,160 people. For example, in Sunken Temple, we're talking about 5,066 guilds that actually cleared Sunken Temple all the way to Hakar, and this is considered like the most unpopular phase in all of Season of Discovery. So we are comparing like 13,000 people to like 115,000 people. That's the magnitude or heroic. Of course, it doesn't mean that Cataclysm is dead, quite the contrary, Cataclysm is booming. It is just heroic that is really, really small. If you go over to the normals, now you can see like a very comparable results here. You can see that in 25 people killed Nefarian 2,300 times, and we can add it up because you can also check out the 10-man right here, and people killed Nefarian a total of 5,040 times. 108,000 people actually cleared Nefarian all the way to the end. This doesn't even tell the whole story. This right here is a graph that Wowhead made because I don't have the first week of data anymore in Warcraft logs, but Wowhead over here made like a little graph showing the pulls it takes to kill every boss on average in normal. As you can see, Nefarian is a magnitude, it is 6 times harder than the second hardest boss in the entire tier. As you can see here, Maloriak is 2040 kills, the previous boss to Nefarian of course, and Nefarian is 2300, so about 88% of people actually make it to Nefarian, that's what it means. All the other raids fail before they get to Nefarian, actually more, because if you look at here, Omnotron defense system, it is 1957, so it's probably a little less even than that. But anyway, what I'm trying to say here is that the population in Cataclysm is not dead, quite the contrary. It is huge, and even still, most people given the chance are not trying to do heroic. You're gonna see something really cool that I wanna show you about the phenomena of Cataclysm, let's call it. And that is that some of these numbers do not add up. For example, why are so few people killing Atramidis in normal? Because you need to kill Atramidis to get to Nefarian. There is less people killing Magmo than Omnotron, even though most raids traditionally kill Magmo before Omnotron. What is happening is that most guilds currently are doing something else. As you guys know, the heroic and the normal are the same lockout now, and as you can see right here, when you go to heroic mode, the data flips. A lot more people are killing Atramidis than they are killing Omnotron, for example, or Magmo. The standard way of raiding in Cataclysm currently, the way most guilds are doing it, is that they are gonna do the easy heroic bosses, they are gonna get the easy heroic loot, and then they are gonna swap back to normal, and they will never try to do the hard ones. There is even some interesting things here, like people will actually choose to skip bosses that they consider too hard. For example, the Ascendant Council, you need to kill the Ascendant Council to get to Cho'Gall, and you need to kill Valion and Teralion to get to the Ascendant Council. It is a linear fight, you cannot skip bosses like you can in Blackwing Descent. So people are actually doing Ascendant Council in normal, so they can get to Cho'Gall heroic, because most people consider that Cho'Gall heroic is easier than the Ascendant Council. So people are using the lockout system and the heroic and normal system to actually get around bosses, which is something that also I never seen in private servers. I do not recall people doing this at all. Mixing and matching bosses did happen, but I never seen actually people trying to skip Ascendant Council. For the most part, back then, and we're talking like not even that long ago, we're talking like what, 3-4 years ago, you either were clearing heroic or you were clearing normal, and that was pretty much it. Maybe if you failed to clear the heroic with the guild, they would go the last day of the lockout and they would go back to normal and clear it just for the gear. But this behavior is completely new to me. People tell me that in retail this happens all the time, so I guess this is where it comes from, but I never seen this before, and it definitely wasn't a thing back in Cataclysm proper either. With a little math you can actually figure out that about 13% of players are actually clearing the place in heroic compared to the people that are clearing the place in normal. 1 of 8 of all the people that do normal are doing heroic. So for the actual question at the start of the video, is this place too hard? Now I don't want to use the word too hard instead of the word just hard period, because I think that's gonna be a very personal thing to say. What I gotta tell you about tier 11 in particular, because this is not really a problem in tier 12 for the most part, is that in tier 11 you cannot brute force the mechanics. There is a lot of skill checks in tier 11 in particular that you cannot get around with gear. It doesn't matter how good your healers are, if people are not doing a perfect movement at the third phase of Alakir they will die. It doesn't matter how good your DPSers are. If you spread them out poorly in Heroic Conclave of the Four Winds, you are gonna wipe. It doesn't matter how good your healers, tanks, and DPSers at the same time are good. When you're doing Nefarion and you're facing too fast or too slow, or you're not taking advantage of being able to DPS him in between phases, or you cannot kite them properly, or your mages are not seizing the ads properly, it doesn't matter if you're in 372 gear or in blues, you will die. And at the core of it, I think that's the problem with tier 11. And that's really the reason that I don't want to progress to Heroic anymore. I just get the easy bosses done and then I go back to normal like everybody else, because it doesn't feel like progression, okay? When Sunken Temple came out and people were complaining that it was too hard, okay, I get it. It was a lot harder than Nomeregan, for example. But after we did it like 2 or 3 times in the lockout and everybody got their gear, the fights became super easy because all the fights were DPS checks or healing checks or tanking checks. And once you had enough numbers, you could afford to not play perfectly and you could still kill the bosses. So Sunken Temple, even though it didn't get trivialized, it became a very simple raid, a very casual raid to do once you were like 2 weeks into the progression. This will never feel the same. It doesn't matter if your entire raid is best in slot. I mean, yes, you're gonna get around some DPS checks better, that's it. The mechanics are still gonna be perfect, you are gonna have to be on edge the whole time. This also makes it very hard to grow the Heroic community, because if it were simple numbers checks like it is in Sunken Temple, once people are very advanced with their gear and stuff, you can afford to take one of your friends that is kinda bad at the game or learning or whatever and carry him through like a couple raids until he figures it out. But in Cataclysm, because of how the mechanics are actually just playing checks, skill checks, there is very little incentive for you to take a new person and help them out so they can figure it out, because they will cause a lot more trouble than they will give you later. If you help somebody learn how to play the game, yes, they may become a very good player in 2 or 3 weeks if they are really trying, but by that time you spent like 2 hours wiping every raid because of that one guy. That's also the problem with tier 11. There is a lot of fights in tier 11 where the one guy can screw the whole thing up, and I was that one guy a lot. That's also why I stopped playing, okay? I am not trying to pretend I am excellent at the game. It took me, and I cap you not, an hour. It took me an hour of wiping my raid, an hour of killing the raid, and thank you for being patient with me, okay? People were very patient. I murdered my raid in Nefarion for 1 hour until I stopped doing it. I started actually tanking Onyxia properly, which back for 20-year-old me, when I was super tryhard and super focused on the game and stuff like that, that would have been fine, because I would have retained that knowledge. I would have actually tried every day. I would have been there for hours doing it until I got it right, and I would have gone from there. But just from an energy perspective, I don't think it is fun for me anymore to do that. But having that to say, I don't think the tuning of Heroic is too hard. I think the mechanics and the nature of the mechanics of Heroic are the problem. And do not worry, because Firelands actually fixes most of these issues, so I might come back to Heroic after that. It is just the simple RPG feeling that you're getting ahead in life, you know, that you're getting actually progressing and getting stronger and better. And when you're doing Heroic and you wipe when you do something wrong, even though you got like 12 times more gear than before, it just doesn't feel like you're progressing. It feels like you are in a mouse wheel all the time. I guess the problem is also the simple fact that it is 359 versus 372. Are 10 item levels really worth doing all this hassle? Is it worth it to do this? Do I want to spend 16 hours a week progressing on Heroic just for the off chance that I'm gonna get like, what, 30,000 more HP on my character? Or I could just spend 3 hours and do every single normal. I could do it on stream, cracking jokes and messing around the whole time and having a great time. And like, honestly, just the cost opportunity of that situation, it makes me not want to do it. I don't know, guys, are you the same way? Do you guys feel the same way about this thing, or am I just a weirdo here? Have you done Heroic? Did you actually give up on Heroic? I would love to know. I would actually love to know your perspective on it. I would love to do a follow-up on this. Subscribe, join the Discord, and thank you for watching!